concerning the Apollo 11 moon landing. I know my science, says Ministry of Defense insider, and he exposes the truth of NASA's Apollo 11 moon landing, and especially the flag waving. NASA's iconic Apollo 11 mission happened more than 50 years ago, but there are still conspiracy theories ramping over a possibility that these landings were faked. On July 21st, 1969, Neil Armstrong made history. He became the first man to step foot on the moon's surface. He was joined shortly after that by his colleague Buzz Aldrin, before they both buried the US flag into the surface of the moon and bringing an end to the space race. For years, though, conspiracy theorists claim the event was staged and the lunar landing was never a reality, and they were staged in order to trump the Soviet Union as the US fell behind in the space exploration after Russia put up Sputnik, their satellite, during the time of the Cold War. But former Minister of Defense employee Nick Pope puts these rumors to bed because he analyzes some of the leading claims, for one of them being the waving flag. He told ITN 2009, he says, I worked in government for 21 years in the Ministry of Defense. I spent 3 years investigating UFO sightings through that. I learned about the psychology of belief and in particular conspiracy theories, he says. And he was asked about the leading theory over why the flag appears to blow in the wind as if it had air around it blowing it. And he said that's what's happening, is that they're moving the flag around, trying to get it into the ground. Of course, it was difficult, I guess. Even though it looks dusty on top, it must have been a lot more solid right underneath the dust. Now, because there is virtually no atmosphere on the moon, he says, there's no air resistance, so once you move something, it carries on moving. Now, this former civil servant also had another claim over why so many different shadows and angles can be seen on the lunar surface. He said one of the arguments is shadows pointing in different directions, but I think that if you're dealing with a surface that is not even, you'll find that shadows aren't exactly parallel, and this is something that people actually test themselves. Don't take my word for it, try it yourself, he says. And he goes on to explain most of the things that people are taking photos and films of the moon were actually quite reflective. So to take those images, the shutter speed has to be very, very quick so you don't get the stars. An analogy would be that if you stood under a street lamp and took a photo of the night sky, you would not see the stars. If this was done in a film studio, you think you'd take something so obvious off the first place? In effect, that defeats the argument, he says. Pope finished by concluding that people should give more respect for the enormous achievement made by the Apollo series. He says, I may have worked for government, but I know my science. I find it quite insulting to people who have put their lives on the line. Pope worked for the Ministry of Defense from 1991 to 94 in a section known as SEC ASA2, and his duties included investigating reports of UFO sightings to see if they had any defense significance. At the time, Ministry of Defense stated that it remains totally open-minded about the existence or otherwise of extraterrestrial life forms and their craft. It also stated that there was no evidence to suggest any UFO sightings posed any threat to the UK or that they were extraterrestrial in origin. Pope says that the Ministry of Defense was the Directorate of posting in the Ministry of Defense was to the Directorate of Defense Security. In 2009, Ministry of Defense announced that UFO sightings would no longer be investigated. This is on Express UK by Callum Hoare. Well, we know that this spring, if everything goes as planned, I don't know, because we're all living under extraordinary circumstances, the UK plan to release all their UFO files to the public, making them all declassified. So people will be able to go into those archives and examine things and research for themselves. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, You will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.